I see you there, jumping on social media within 5 seconds of this video saying that I'm biased, a bloody idiot, and I should change my name to Adam Shilborn for this list. But before you go all caps blazing into the comments section, why not check out this video, 10 wrestlers with the AEW stink, to see that I can sell out for both companies, and then you can take your comment and shove it right up your arse. Anyway, the dreaded stink doesn't need to be for life, even if it is absolutely rotten right now. With that in mind, I'm Adam Wilborn from What Culture, and these are 10 wrestlers with the WWE stink. Number 10. Edge. If WWE stink were a fragrance, the bottle would be purple and Edge would be at the center of the absurdly expensive, idiosyncratic TV ad. The Hall of Famer making his comeback at the 2020 Royal Rumble was the company's first truly magic moment of the decade. Part of the magic was wrapped up in the thinking that he was a big enough star to transcend the tropes and trends that had plunged WWE into self-parody for years. Instead, he embraced the playbook. The less said about his current heel turn, the better. Not least because he's been meh since it happened, and the pop-on crowds are greeting it with the silence of Jamie Noble chants. In the interests of fairness, the jury will be out on the Judgment Day until Rhea Ripley and Damian Priest's progression can be accurately assessed. But Edge himself feels swallowed up by the one-note joke of a role, and it could be a long time before he escapes. Number 9. Sonya Deville. Sonya Deville, as of recording, is once again just an active wrestler. This, of course, is the first problem. It's a tale as old as time in world wrestling entertainment. The sports entertainers are compared to the variously titled admin assistants that kayfabe run the show. It was a role Deville assumed with some honor before succumbing to malice like the rest of them. She's at long last been punished by the board of directors that have somehow put up with these villains in the roles for upwards of 20 years now. Her slow stroll back to the squared circle was completely understandable after the real-life home invasion she experienced alongside Mandy Rose in 2020, but the all-too-familiar heel feuds against Naomi and then Bianca Belair have positioned her as an idiot too single-minded to keep one job and too rusty to do the other. Thankfully, nothing is allowed to be forever in WWE, and she is talented enough to be one good run away from getting shot of the titular stink. Number 8. Gunther. Look, it's not even the silly name. It might have been had he taken the original one and shared his handle with a legitimate Nazi war commander, but Gunther is no more egregious than a Cesaro or a Riddle or any of the many others over the years. For God's sake, Dolph Ziggler was World Heavyweight Champion, and his name was Dolph Ziggler. And not least because this guy ain't Walter. Walter was a colossus who looked a lot like Michael Hamflett, even if he didn't boast the height of a behemoth or the size of a super heavyweight. Walter was an elite tier wrestler capable of hanging with other elite tier wrestlers that afforded WWE the rarest of hardcore fan base wins once in a while in the New Wrestling War against AEW. Walter was unlike virtually everybody else except Michael Hamflett. Gunther is every other sports entertainer, and not even because of the new bright red gear or the name change or the music change or the breaking up of his stable or the obvious and bewildering reduction of the Chop's importance. Gunther is every other sports entertainer because he locks up, runs headlock spots, catches a dive as SmackDown rolls on, grabs a hold until the fans can be arsed to clap their babyface back into action, and then runs through his signature spots with less than half the vim and vigor of old. A violent monster can be won by any other name, but Gunther, and possibly Walter now, who knows, categorically isn't that in WWE. Number 7. Lacey Evans. Ugh, it was never destined to end well, any of this. WWE debuted the story of Lacey Evans on April the 8th, and she was on television by May the 6th, flexing her biceps and soaking up the support of the fans. This was always the plan. It's the rest of the story that shouldn't have been. Evans went into the weeds describing the very, very difficult life she'd had before landing in WWE the first time several years ago. WWE had already shown some negligence by not adding content warnings nor associated support lines, and the exploitative nature was destined to boil over eventually, but it happened in a way that nobody could have expected. Ahead of introducing her to a live audience for the first time, ring announcer Samantha Irvin spoke to the viewers down the hard camera lens whilst asking the audience to show Evans the requisite respect. WWE audience are remarkably subservient, it would seem, because the people did, despite the obvious heel trope. She's since been moved to Monday Night Raw amidst some controversy and public opinion that WWE have atrociously misread the situation, and her first feud will only be all the more telling. Number 6. Mustafa Ali. Mustafa Ali is trying, the poor bastard. When he last held down regular TV work, Ali was trapped beneath a gimmick so utterly risible it destroyed the credibility of almost everybody who came into contact with it. Was a relentless nightmare, often made worse by the attempts of the wrestlers involved to wake up. Ali cut scathing Twitter promos trying to justify everything from the awful ring names to the lousy booking, but he was fighting somebody else's hideously uncreative battle. And after a protracted absence around contract issues and Ali's attempt to leave, he returned to television to go 50-50 with the usual Raw mid-card lot and took to Twitter with some very Vince McMahon-friendly comedy. Everything about the man's guile is admirable, and perhaps that is the problem. He's not in a place where such a thing is typically rewarded. Number 5. Dolph Ziggler and/or The Miz. It's a draw for the long-standing utility men, if only because they often go through purple patches where their obvious upsides are used to benefit something, even if that something might not lead to something else. Both were busy over WrestleMania weekend, with Ziggler winning and losing in matches against Bron Breakker that served as misguided attempts to get the newcomer over as the most credible version of himself. Meanwhile, Miz was well cast as Logan Paul's partner and attacker either side of their WrestleMania tag team match against the Mysterios. Since then, it's been back to the old reliable grind, but the old reliable grind feeling is one of the many reasons WWE lost their monopoly in 2017. Miz and Ziggler aren't individually at fault, but few represent the foibles of the modern system more than these two. Up and down the card they go, filling in as needed on both sides of the heel babyface divide, whilst reading out their own Wikipedia pages as a way to put over their achievements in a manner that completely does away with it being the emulation of a sporting pursuit. If they didn't look like people who would smell exquisite on the reg, the WWE stink lines would probably be visible to the naked eye. Number 4. Bron Breakker. One of the few instant shining lights from the aggressive rebadging of the developmental in 2021, Breakker had enough dumb jock intensity, a jacked physique, and an absolutely wicked spear. A minuscule number of matches under his weight belt needn't have mattered. The same skill set worked well enough for Goldberg, didn't it? Well, what didn't work for Big Bill was WWE's attempt to turn him into a long match practitioner or a jack of all trades in 2003. Draining and dull pay-per-view bouts squeezed every bit of aura out of him, and it's already happening with Rick Steiner's fired-up son. Rather than a squash merchant, the NXT champion is working drab formula bouts that expose his limitations, his engine, and his it factor. It's a pity the fun ended so quickly. Number 3. The Usos. Roman Reigns is going away soon. A bit. The head of the table will work a reduced schedule over the summer months, stopping by to make some television towns and the big 3 stadium shows between July and September. But the undisputed WWE Universal Champion theoretically won't be half as present as he has been for the duration of his lengthy and, let's be honest, slightly exhausting stint on top. So why has this entry about the Usos been more about Roman Reigns than the current SmackDown Tag Team Champions? Well, why else? They exist purely to stand next to him, and he often only exists just to stand there himself. Any shred of artistic flair the company might have once shown with regard to the cousins finally turning on their gaffer was dropped cold as soon as they became goons and losers, taking his bumps and working his dark matches. And they're not the only shattered part of that act that might benefit from the tribal chief's potential absence. Number 2. Paul Heyman. Roman Reigns' special counsel to the tribal chief is doing much the same as he was alongside Brock Lesnar and CM Punk, and their original union in 2020 was absolutely the missing piece of the brand new Reigns heel puzzle. What's been his purpose since then? He stands next to Reigns, he stands next to the ring post, he stands next to the Usos, and repeat. Heyman doesn't run interference in the way he used to and over-egged his parts when the inevitable questions of loyalty were asked during the Reigns program with Lesnar. Pulling funny faces used to be an accoutrement rather than the entire bit. Like much of the act, it's too phoned in to feel fully functional. Number 1, Drew McIntyre. Drew McIntyre being splashed all over the marketing for September's Clash at the Castle Stadium show in Cardiff, as well as being credited for willing the show into existence, has convinced plenty of folk that he's actually going to be the one to dethrone the undisputed WWE Universal Champion Roman Reigns on the night. This might be the wisest play. The company will absolutely draw parallels between Davey Boy Smith's historic SummerSlam 1992 win over Bret Hart, and the company will do everything to make the show feel like it's one of similar prestige. But in terms of the Scottish Warrior himself, the boat has sadly been missed. One too many comedy programs, that bloody sword, and losses to Reigns before he's managed to get the big win have left him to be the man playing the role of WWE headliner rather than simply being one. Credibility counts, and the company stole far too much of McIntyre's when he needed it most. How they present him in the months to come will be crucial if they want the grand Cardiff win to feel even remotely imminent. And that's our list. Did we miss any out? Let us know in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And subscribe to What Culture Wrestling on either iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from for daily wrestling podcasts. Plus, you can let us know your thoughts on Twitter at WhatCultureWWE. And you can find me on there at Adam Wilborn. Thanks for watching. I've been Adam from What Culture, and I'll see you soon.